Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today, I am here with a very special guest. I have been following her for years, and I'm so excited to have her on my podcast today because the message that she's sharing on social media is so inspiring. She's a nurse and a qualified midwife, and she is also being a WBFF bikini pro, and she's now in the online coaching space. And I'd love to introduce to you Sharelle Grant. Hello, Sharelle.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on the podcast, and what a wholesome intro.
Like I said, it's an absolute honor to have you on today because I have been following your journey for so long, and the message that you do put out on social media is so empowering and inspiring, especially for people that are starting their fitness, their wellness journey. That's why I said to Danny Antonellos when I had her on my show, I need to get Sharelle on because, like I said, the message you're sharing, it needs to be heard by so many people.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's odd being on the opposite side of a podcast, like being a guest. Obviously, myself and Danny, we have a podcast together, and I think it's such a great way to be able to connect with like your audience and really share your story. And you just can't fake it on podcast either. There's a lot of script that comes with social media, but podcasting is just a whole nother game. And yeah, it's really fun to do. So thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to have a chat.
Yeah, and like I said at the start, I was just said to Sharelle, just be yourself. And she said, I have no problems with that. And it's really cool because I think with podcasts, you can really get to see the authenticity of behind the people that you follow on social media, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Sharelle, for those that are listening and have no idea who you are, how old are you? Where are you from?
Yeah. Well, I'm 28 years old and I grew up in country Victoria, which I grew up in a town, and not many people probably know, barring those who watch the weather, but I grew up in a country town called Swan Hill, and it's sort of in between Majura and Bendigo, top end of Victoria. So I grew up in the Mallee. I'm very much a country gal, and something I always get on podcasts and even Instagram stories is just my accent. Apparently I have a really country accent, so I'll wear it proudly. I did grow up in the country, and yeah, I moved away when I was 18. I was a year younger in high school, so I was 17, and then I moved away at the end of year 12, just turning 18, and went to university to study nursing, became a qualified nurse. And I've always been passionate about health and fitness in general. I just had no idea, to be honest, what I really wanted to do, and I just thought health in terms of nursing was a good avenue to go down, and that's really where things started for me. I'm a very different person now to what I was growing up as a teenager. I was definitely a bit of a party, small country town thing. I feel like that's what everyone does. They play netball and they drink on the weekends. It's
like Bendigo, Macedon Ranges. That's where I'm from.
Oh, really? Yep. Bendigo is like a big version of Swan Hill.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's my little bit of a backstory. I guess I moved away when I was 18 and went to university, and that's where things really started to change for me.
Yeah, wow. And so what was that like shift? So you were studying nursing, midwifery, and you went down that path. And like you said, you were a party goer, small town things, and now you're in the online coaching space, helping people with their like mental, social, emotional, physical well-being. What was that shift for you? Like, how do you go from A to B?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I was exposed to a different lifestyle when I was younger. And I'm actually really grateful for that because I learned a lot and I got a lot out of the way when I was younger. And, going to uni, that was like the best years of my life, to be honest. So, the old P's get degrees was my mentality going through nursing, to be fully transparent. And, I have no regrets in doing that. I met so many amazing people, but throughout nursing and like when I started working as a full-time nurse, I think that's what I grew up really quickly, to be honest. Like when you're in a job like that, a service-based industry, like caring for people, at their most vulnerable state and really seeing, I guess, health on both extremes, you do grow up pretty fast. So my first couple of years out of uni, I transitioned like into the real world, I guess. And, nursing is a really challenging industry, to be honest. Like you wear so many roles, and I accredit a lot of my, I guess, perspective and experiences and even a lot of my foundational knowledge, to be honest, through going through nursing in general. And I developed a lot of passion and interest for health in that time. And as I mentioned, I've always just been so passionate about the human body and learning. It's like biology and chemistry and psychology. They've always been the subjects that have really intrigued me. And going through, I guess, nursing, particularly my grad year, I saw around me how a lot of my colleagues were quite unhealthy. Like as health professionals, nurses, like we really stand out as people that just don't manage their health very well. And that's a very big generalization, but I often find that a lot of people in service-based industries, they're so good at caring for other people. They're so good at putting themselves last. You work night shift, you do a lot of extremes when it comes to the job itself, that your own physical and mental health usually comes second. And that's what makes, I guess, not a good nurse, but in service-based jobs, it's almost like it attracts those types of people. And I sort of, early in my career, I was really fortunate to sort of take a step back and be like, I need to fill up my own cup and look after my own physical health, like especially if I'm going into full-time shift work. So that was my first point of entry, to be like, how can I biohack my way around night duty? Like, how can I make sure that I feel energized doing a late early? And how can I really make sure that I'm recovering? And that was my, I guess, getting into fitness aspect. I started running, I started going to the gym, I started looking into nutrition, and I guess it just become a bit of an obsession as well. I just started to learn a lot more, and that intellectual pace got fueled by learning more about fitness. And yeah, I took it like as a responsibility for myself, being in a job like that I had to look after my health alongside it.
I can really resonate with that, especially like going from putting all of your effort giving to everybody else, and then as soon as you do that one thing that fills up your cup, like learning about nutrition and the foods that are going to best serve you, or exercising, it gets addictive, and then you just go all in. Yeah. And so then going into becoming a bikini pro, what was that journey like for you? Because were you still working as a shift worker during that time?
Yeah, so I've only been in business now full-time for about 18 months or 2 years. So I did, it almost feels like when I have to reflect on it, it feels like I was living a double life. Like I went through nursing and I wanted to go back and do some postgrad studies. So I went back into uni and became a midwife. And that's when going through postgrad was one of the most difficult things of my life. It's just such a different level of expectation when you go back to university to do something like that physically and mentally. And along that ride, it's where I really developed a passion for women's health, going through midwifery and going down that avenue. But I guess going through it all, I just became more passionate about fitness. And it sort of comes back to, it wasn't one that really led into the other. It was these two parallels that I was growing interest in, like women's health and fitness, like consecutively. So the fitness side of things, I just slowly and surely actually just started to really enjoy resistance training. Like I did have a bit of a running background as well, but that's even like another story. But I started getting into the weights room eventually and really responding well and just enjoying that style of training, to be honest. And as we all do, I did like a 12-week generic challenge as like a bit of an entry point to see what I was capable of. And like, I was really surprised at how well my body responded to that style of training. Like, it was definitely a bro split. It was definitely like low calories, but still probably higher protein and probably more calories than what I was actually eating in hindsight. And reflecting on that, like after that, I guess, transformation that I had in that short period of time, it gave me a lot of motivation to think, wow, what am I capable of? Like, if I can apply myself and do this, like, what else am I actually capable of? So I started, I guess, dabbling and considering the competing world. And the gym that I was training at, there was an older gentleman there, and I used to call him Gym Dad. He was like I guess an old school bodybuilder, like that would, wear the stringer singlets and,
I feel like every gym has that.
Oh, they do. They do. And he was so lovely. The reason why I called him Gym Dad is because like when the boys would come up and try and pick me up, he would come up and pretend to be my dad and be like, that's my daughter. And it was sort of this internal joke. So I called him Gym Dad. He was like, reflecting now, he was really my first mentor in the fitness space. But looking back to, like, he had no idea either. I was very much bro split, you eat your steak and eggs and you lift heavy weights, and that's the way you do things. But he implanted the seed in me and said to me, have you ever thought about competing? And I was always like, oh no, I could never do that. Could never do it. But then I was just looking and, I was just obsessed with the process. I was obsessed with training. I still am obsessed with training. Like, when I look at competing now, like, being a professional in the sport, it's got nothing to do with the stage day or even the glitz and the glam. Like, some people do it for that, and that's not me. Like, I would compete on the gym floor if I could at the end of the day. But yeah, I guess I just became really fixated on the process and learning and evolving and challenging myself. And I loved the elements that I took from my training and competing in general, and how it bled over into other areas as well.
I love that. And so you mentioned that knowing that you're capable of more and going, okay, well, what else can I do? So I'm curious, Sharelle, have you come across any limiting beliefs along that way where you've gone to the edge of your comfort zone and gone, oh, I can see that I'm capable of more, and taking that leap of faith to go and do that? Have you, I guess, come across challenges along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still do. Like, another level, another devil. Every time you take another step, it seems so much bigger. And as I mentioned, I still do. They're not so much limiting beliefs. Like, they're not limiting me. They're just challenges at the end of the day. And I think, you develop, when you push yourself to work through challenges, you can flip the script and be like, well, what am I learning from this? Like, how can I work around it? I think when it comes to the physical side, like, seeing how much I can achieve physically helps me overcome anything mentally at the end of the day, because it's like, wow, if I can do all of this, like, I need to get out of my own way at the end of the day. And I learn a lot of that through, I guess, navigating fitness with full-time shift work and everything. Like, I earned my pro card coming off the back end of night shift, flying, interstate. And, I used to do crazy things and I used to make it work. And I've spoken a lot about this with shift work in the past, but sometimes you have to turn like situations that aren't optimal and just make it practical and do your best at the end of the day. So I think everything that I've been able to achieve, it's not necessarily like the physical outcome that's got me there at all. Like, I haven't physically done anything that's different besides work hard and just have a little bit of inner belief and grit in myself.
I love that so much. And I guess for people listening, I'm sure that they would want to know, especially with that inner belief piece, because I know there's so many people out there listening to this that would be seeing what you're doing on social media and how confident you are in your message and what you're showing, and being able to keep going beyond those challenges when they do arise. What would be like 3 pieces of advice for the people listening on surpassing those challenges and maintaining that self-belief?
Yeah, I guess when it comes to like just building inner belief, right, I generally believe confidence is a choice at the end of the day. And I testament this to my nursing career, but there was a lot of times where I had to put on a poker face and pretend like I knew what the hell I was doing when I didn't, especially as a midwife. You're like, no, I've done this heaps of times. And that doesn't come from a place of like being incompetent or being incapable. It just means that sometimes you have to genuinely fake it a little bit to make it. And a lot of people take that with the wrong lens. Like they think that's a negative thing. But I think, no, if you're actually pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, it's normal to feel a little bit anxious or overwhelmed. It's normal. It means you care and it means you're pushing yourself, you're stretching, right? So I often reframe it for myself and go, am I nervous or am I excited? Because to me, physiologically, those two sensations and emotions, they feel the same inside you, elevated heart rate, shortness of breath, sweating, like you're going to have the same responses. But if you tell yourself that you're anxious, you can work yourself up into a tizzy and not be able to think clearly and be calm and have a lot of clarity. Whereas if you're excited, it's just a different energy as well. So I'm a massive fan of like sports psychology books. I love reading a lot about like building self-efficacy and a lot of success stories from athletes and how they overcome things at like the Olympics and, top level MBA and performance. Like I love reading stories like that because I think if these people, like when the stakes is that high, you can imagine something like the Olympics, you're training for like years and years and years for 10 seconds of performance. What are some of the things that they do to be able to stay calm? Because it's all relative, like whether you're competing at the Olympics, getting on stage or going into a new gym and trying to overcome gym anxiety for the first time, it's all experience and it's all relative. So for me, it's about flipping the script again and being like, am I nervous or am I excited for this opportunity? And that's going to impact how I actually respond. The other thing that I find really helpful for building like self-efficacy, which is the terminology of having inner belief in yourself, is collecting evidence. So for me, if I'm nervous about competing at a pro show, for example, which I have a big pro show coming up at the end of the year that I am a little bit nervous for. But then if I reframe it, I go, no, I'm just excited. I'm not anxious. I'm just excited. For me, I go, can I do this? And I go, well, yes, I can. I have a pro status. Like I've already proven that I qualify for this. And then I collect evidence again and I go, I've been training for a long time and I will put in the work, So you collect evidence of things that you've done in the past to let go of these limiting beliefs and allow you to build a bit more confidence in being able to move forward.
And I love that you said that because it really resonates with a lot of the things that I teach as well with my mindset coaching. And when we have a belief, your reticular activating system in your brain will search your experience to prove that.
Yep.
So if you have that empowering belief of, yeah, I can do this, your brain will then search your experience to prove why, which is why I really love what you just said, because that's what I'm all about as well. Mm-hmm. And so you went from nursing full-time to then starting your own business. And I'm sure that would have been a little bit out of your comfort zone. So I guess going back to that moment for you, what was that transition point where you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I had a different experience to what I believe a lot of other people have had. And that's just my own assumption, because reading up about like going into business, you hear about this, you must bleed for it. And, you've got to work while you're sleeping. And for me, it was almost a pull towards like, I have to do this, with the nursing and midwifery. I had like a little bit of like, have you heard of the sunk cost fallacy? Yeah. So like when you've done something for a period of time and you have a little bit of like residue or hesitation from pulling away from it, like it's a big identity for me, and there's no such thing as wasted time, right? Because you gain experience from it. So for me, there was a lot of inner work of being like, am I letting go of all of this? Going against the grain of what society tells you success looks like, getting the degree, buying the house, having the kids. I very much have not followed that trajectory for myself. And, with something like nursing and midwifery, it's meant having to let go of skills, to be honest, and let go of being able to go back to it. So for me, unlike a lot of other industries, I didn't have a plan B. It was sort of like this or that. Because once you pull back from something where you need to be proficient and competent in, like I'm not going to go into the delivery suite once a month and think that I should be able to deliver a baby. You know what I mean? I need to be there. It's the same application is no one wants a part-time coach. You want someone that's invested into a career. So for me, I knew I got to a point, and yes, I had a little bit of a transition phase, of course, where I pulled back from nursing and started taking on clients and had this little period, but it was only 3 to 6 months where I decided to really throw it all in. And to be fully transparent, the thing that made that decision fast-tracked was COVID. I had to make a few tough decisions about, was I going to be in the hospital during those times? It was quite demanding. Or was I going to try this other avenue? And for me, that was conflicting as well because, again, service-based industries, I love helping people. So there was a bit of conflict there about what I wanted to do. But again, I was being pulled, and I just knew when I was at work all the time thinking about this other thing, I just knew I'm doing everyone a disservice by being here. I need to try this other thing. What's the worst case that can happen? If I don't like it, I can go back as long as it hasn't been too long for me. So a lot of internal work, a lot of reflection, a lot of speaking to other people as well. Like my partner was really helpful in all of this and being able to clarify. And to me, like when I the thing that made me really take the leap was thinking, regret, like later on in life when this opportunity is gone, would kill me. Whereas I knew the opposite would be okay. If it didn't work out, at least.
I love that so much. I can really resonate with your story. I feel like I had went through the same process going from face-to-face personal training to then online, and then also mindset coaching in that as well. I can really resonate with just taking that leap of faith. And so my question to you, Sharelle, is what would be maybe, again, 3 pieces of advice for people that are resonating with you and your story about going against the grain of what everyone else is doing and following that pull, that inner knowing? What would your advice be to those people listening?
Yeah, for me as well, again, like it was a little bit different because I liked nursing and midwifery. It's not that I didn't like my job, but I loved this. So I knew that I had to let go of something good for something great. And that in my opinion, is harder than letting go of something that you don't like for something that you like. So for me, it was almost like, I'm someone that does have a high amount of self-worth in terms of I know that I deserve a good life. And, that's not coming from a place of arrogance or anything, but it's like I want the best that I can have for myself. So for me, it was like not wanting to accept something that was okay or average. And honestly, it breaks my heart when I hear people talk about their jobs that they hate. I just think, why? And I understand, like, everyone's entitled to different privileges as well. And I fully acknowledge that. But I think if you're young, and not even if you're young, but if you're like young, especially if you're in your 20s or early 30s, like you got a lot of years to work, and you better make sure you're doing something that you like at the end of the day. So to me, like I still honestly, I don't feel like I work that much, and I work a lot. Do you know what I mean? Because what I do fills my cup up. It doesn't drain me at all. And it also complements the life that I want. Health and fitness is a huge value for me. And to be able to have both lives marry up where I can value my own health as well as educating and teaching others how to do the same, it just correlated so strongly for me. So in terms of figuring out, like, taking the leap, I honestly think there's no shortcuts. You just have to do the inner work, because at the end of the day, it's not usually the physical side, right? Like, yes, you're going to have to take a cut financially at the end of the day. That's just something you got to get over at the start. For me, I was like, I don't want to do this while I have debt. Do you know what I mean? So this is why I took being young as an opportunity to move while I could, because I guess not the risk, but potentially the risk wasn't very high for me, to be honest. So yeah, I think time is really precious in life, and you would rather get started on something that you love to be able to build more time, more experience, more confidence, so that you can get to where you want to be, in the years to come.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I'm sure the listeners are getting so much value from this. Even me sitting here, I'm like, yes, this is great.
Yeah.
So what drives you forward, Sharelle? Because obviously you've had, like you said, this inner knowing and this pull towards women's health and fitness and correlating them both together to help women. What motivates you to I guess, pursue this vision?
Honestly, it's being able to provide something that like I wish I had, with the women's health movement that I'm sort of, founding at the moment and creating and building out. It's being able to provide something that I felt like there was a void for me. When I was going through all of these things, I feel like I can take a woman from, 0 to 6 months in something that might have taken me 1 to 5 years. And to me, I'm like envious of that. On the opposite side, I'm like, guys are so lucky. Like, I'm like, you don't have to go through all that BS that I did. And I just feel like something I also see for myself is just this huge divide between health and fitness. It's the health and fitness industry, but they don't correlate. Health is often neglected when it comes to fitness at the end of the day, especially when you look at a lot of extremes. So for me and the way in which I coach, it's very much and I know holistic's butchered a lot, but it is very holistic in terms of, we work with a lot of coaches inside the program. It's not just me because I'm not an expert at everything. And I think that's a massive change I'd love to see in the fitness industry is like, there's not one person that has all the answers. Like I know when to outsource and I know when to insource and I know when to refer at the same time. And the other thing that I feel like is my direction is just being able to provide a space that has women's health mindset. And I know even mindset has a funny, I guess, like taste for people, but it's mental health at the end of the day. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do if you feel horrible about what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone thinks that their training program and their nutrition is going to fix the problems. And it's usually not. Like it's a lot of habit building. And that's something I say as well. Like we're a habit building based program. We focus on building sustainable habits because I don't care what you look like in 12 to 20 weeks. Like I care how you're feeling physically and mentally in 5 years. And at the end of the day, a coaching experience, unfortunately, is a negative one for a lot of people because they come in and they leave with more damage than when they went in, which is very often, and you'd experience this too. Like when you consult with women, like I'm sorry for all the shit that's in the industry because it's not regulated at all. And I almost feel like it's a responsibility to almost come in and be able to provide something that's premium for those who really do take it seriously and just want to get ahead.
Yes, amen to that, because that is why I went down the mindset route, because I was training people with nutrition and then also the exercise factor, and they were wanting that fast, quick result. And for so, like, as you would know, there's so many people that you can go to, coaches that you can go to that give you that fast result with no health consideration at all. And so for clients to come to me, I just would say, look, I'd really like to focus on your mindset and why you want that fast result first before we then go and establish a plan, which, I can definitely relate to that as well. And you also mentioned before about self-efficacy and the sports psychology books that you have read. So I'm curious to know, what have been your top most life-changing books that you have read along your journey?
Good question. It's a really interesting one because I feel like when it comes to books, it depends on what stage of your life you're at, and what you're currently going through. And I love rereading books when I'm at different chapters of my life. They resonate differently. But in regards to, I guess, from the bottom up, something that I've really learned to appreciate is just habits and routine. And I think that habits, routine, and structure, it is the foundation and the blueprint of everything else coming together. We're creatures of habit, and again, I'm sort of really passionate about like sleep and schedules because I spent a lot of my early career having none of that. Like with shift work, I really just had to learn how to manage and navigate things accordingly. So I always recommend James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. That's a book that I always refer to clients because I feel like it's a really easy starting point if you do want to really acknowledge how important habits are, because a lot of people blow these things off and they think, oh, it's just so easy. And that's the point, right? Like we don't want to have to rely on willpower and discipline all the time because it's high energy, it's high cost, and we need to use it when it's required. It shouldn't be something that's piecing everything together. And unfortunately, when you don't have a routine, if you're a shift worker, you do rely more heavily on willpower and discipline at the end of the day. And there's a cost that comes with that usually. So Atomic Habits by James Clear. I love a lot of Joe Dispenza's books as well. That's a bit more of a heavier read, a bit wordy, but love his stuff. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, The Placebo Effect. They were great books. And probably one of my favorite authors as well would be Brené Brown. All of her books, like I can't recommend her work, her TED Talks.
Yeah, I agree with those 300%. I have been reading Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, and it's just incredible. I actually resonate with the habits thing as well, because I believe that building those small habits is just a way to create that trust within yourself, to show you that you can actually do something, and building that momentum towards your bigger goals. It really has that, okay, if I can do that, I can do those bigger goals as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the main principles when it comes to habits is making it easy for yourself. Like that is what self-efficacy is, being like, oh, I can do that. Of course I can, and we do this with performance-based goals. If you're brand new to the gym, you're not going to put 100 kilos on the bar and go squat that, because you don't have the inner belief that you can do it. And if you don't have that, you're not doing it. Usually we psych ourselves out physically and mentally before anything else. So if you go into the gym, but if you did say like 95 kilos next week, well, you've got more of a chance of knowing that you can do the 100 for the following week. So it's about the small steps. And just like we progressively overload in the gym, we also want to be progressively overloading our habits in the same sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also curious, Sharelle, because I definitely have my own answer for this. And I'm sure I really want to know what your thoughts are on the health and wellness industry and some of the bad advice that you hear commonly thrown around, and your rebuttal to that. Like, what would be advice to the listeners who are starting their health journey or have kind of just getting into a challenge or whatnot, especially after Easter as well? And what would be your, tips for them to avoid getting sidetracked to these coaches or programs that aren't actually best serving their health and wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think something that I would challenge people to ask, if they've done more than one challenge, why? Do you know what I mean? Like, you should be doing things that give you an educational opportunity to learn, to navigate, to manage on your own. And I think some people like flex that, I've done 9 challenges. And I'm like, why? Why are you going back 9 times? Like, why are you starting and stopping and starting and stopping? And something that I work on heavily with my girls is just letting go of that all or nothing mentality, because when we believe in all or nothing, we get all or nothing. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of people go around and round in circles with their health and fitness journey. They're all in on their plan, on track, and then they're off track. And it's about recognizing that at the end of the day, if we have this habit piece ingrained, when we have, a bad week, we regress to our mean. And if we can work on what our mean is, i.e. it's those foundational things, it's not so bad, right? But if our mean is like, Uber Eats every night, Netflix, like feeling like a mess, choosing to do things, self-sabotaging, well, that's not very good at the end of the day. But for me, like, my mean's always going to be usually getting us like steps in, or getting to the gym at least a couple of times a week, choosing whole foods. Like, my mean is a lot higher than what it was 5-10 years ago, for sure. So the goal is always to progress your mean. And it's about asking, well, what's going to progress my mean? It's going to be those small, sustainable habits that at the end of the day become almost subconscious, where you want to do them. And the best way to do that is, investing in education and coaching and people that you believe can have that holistic approach, because slow is always faster when it comes to sustainable changes. Like, when I look at the things that I did when I was 18, they were sort of like unrealistic. And if you can't stick to something, it's probably because it's a bit too much.
Yeah, I resonate with that entirely. When I first started training at the gym, I would train legs like every day for 3 hours, jumping around and doing all the things, all the Instagram workouts. And it got me absolutely nowhere. And I love that you said that about investing in yourself and investing in a coach, because we've made the mistakes already. And so if you want those results faster, then going to someone that has made those mistakes and knows what to do instead of that. Like you said, I also envy my clients, because I'm like, I wish I knew these like pieces of knowing right then and there when I was experiencing this. But like you said, we all go through these things for a reason, and there's no wasted time. It's only just experience. So maybe that is why we're experiencing all these things, so we can then best serve others, which is what I really love.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, like coaches and mentors and just people that have been through it, they can forecast problems that you can't. And I think that's what you're paying for a lot of the time as well. Is like, yes, things can seem like a good idea and I'm just going to do legs every day. And it's like, but when you've had lived experience, or if you've got education behind you as well, then yeah, people can forecast the problems that you wouldn't even know you'd run into.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I want to be mindful of your time, Sharelle. So where can my listeners find you if they want to know more about you and what you offer as a coach?
Yeah, so my own personal Instagram is obviously just Sharelle Grant, but if you're after anything coaching related, we have an Instagram for that called Women's Health Movement, and obviously a website as well, so womenshealthmovement.com, and that's where you can find more information about coaching and the other services that we offer.
Amazing. And I always like to finish my podcast with one last question. So are you ready?
Oh, go for it.
So it doesn't have to relate to anything that we've spoken about already today, but if you could just like intuitively listen in to what you feel the listeners need to hear right now, what would that piece of advice be?
Probably just have patience and compassion with wherever you're at. Do you know what I mean? Like I think of like when I was in my early 20s, or, age is just a number as well. It doesn't matter. But at the start of any learning experience, we put so much pressure on ourselves to be somewhere and to have it all figured out. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm 28 and I still feel like I need to have it figured out. And there'll be people that are 38 going, shut up, Sharelle. So I think just having patience and compassion and realizing that there is no such thing as wasted time, just learning experiences to make the future better.
So good. I feel like every time I ask that question, it just hits like, yes, this is so good.
It's like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but insert.
Every time I'm always the one needing to hear it as well, which is so good. So thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on, Sharelle, today. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing the amazing stuff that you continue to do in the future and getting on stage as a wellness competitor as well. That will be really cool to see. And yeah, hopefully we can do this all again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.